So we'll get started. I want to first thank OIS for letting me lead this investing and raising capital panel. I'm filling some big shoes. Emmett Cunningham otherwise would be here. And I want to thank my esteemed panelists of 4 exciting and active venture funds. And I thought I might just share kind of why they asked me to moderate this panel. Most of you know me as the CEO of Occupier. We've been presenting for the last 4 years our advancement of our 2 assets, Nixol and APX. But what you might not know about me is first, I'm a nerd. I'm an engineer by training. I'm a ChemE from Wayne State in Michigan. And I have an MBA from Harvard. And I've spent 30 years in pharma biotech, of which a third of it was as a strategist, M&A advisor. Here we go. I think we got our 5th panelist. Okay, great. And the next chapter was actually as a VC, doing private biotech companies, very early stage. And the last chapter has been a serial entrepreneur taking multiple companies private to public across many diseases. So first I want to thank this community. I heard earlier, this community very much does embrace new entrants, new ideas, new people, and thank you. Love ophthalmology, definitely can say it's one of the best disease categories to work in. And so with that, a little bit of background on me and why I get to be here. I basically have sat around the entire table as an entrepreneur and a VC and a board member, as many of the panelists here today have as well. So what I asked them to do to introduce themselves was to go name, rank, serial number for all of you in the audience trying to figure out which fund you should come and talk to afterwards, because there'll be a nice line before as we end the break. And so just a little bit around the fund focus, stage. Do you do private and public? How many years has the fund been around? Any other serial rank information you each would like to give? We'll start here with Jeff.
Okay, Mina, thank you very much. I'm Jeff Weinhoff, and I'm with Visionary Ventures. We're entering our 7th year of investing in ophthalmology. It's been an extraordinarily fun thing to do. Fun, lucrative, sometimes very challenging. So our fund is investing out of a second fund. The limited partners are a combination of 90 key opinion leader doctors and institutions and family offices. We will invest out of this fund a little under $200 million. And we're investing all over the eye, front of the eye, back of the eye. Most of our investments start with Series A rounds, have good, strong human proof of concept. We do have a couple of early stage things that are quite interesting and probably a little bit more labor intensive than most that we get into, but we've had really interesting opportunities to do stuff. We've made 15 investments in the last 5 years, and we've exited through public offerings and sales of our portfolio companies.
Great, thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Stillwater. I'm a partner at Bluestem Capital. We're located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We've been in business now for about 30 years. And it wasn't until probably about 7 years ago when we made our first investment in the eyeball, so to speak. All of our investors are high net worth individuals. We have no institutional money. We're actually investing out of our 23rd fund right now. Yeah, I know. And, it was Dr. Vance Thompson, who is a longtime friend of the Bluestem team, that, is the gentleman that convinced us that this is a space we should invest in. He introduced us to Andy Corley. Andy Corley introduced us to Jeff. Jeff introduced us to Bill. Bill introduced us to Dick. And it's kind of interesting because it's been stated so many times today about the community here. It really is a community. I mean, we've invested in approximately 100 businesses now over the years, and it's been everything from light manufacturing, retail, apartments, hotels, light manufacturing, software as a service companies. But this is a space I really do like investing in. It starts with the people. This is such a community, and the innovation that goes on here and the collaboration really makes it a place where I want to spend my time, because as my partner says, you can't do a good deal with bad people, and it is this group here is as people that are worth spending time with. So, and as it relates to where we look to get involved in companies, I'd say probably our sweet spot is Series A. I mean, will we get involved earlier? Sometimes, but not very often. Will we also make our investments later on in companies in Series B, C, or D? Yes. So Series A is probably the sweet spot, but we'll go anywhere where there's a great opportunity.
Great, thanks. James?
So James Murray, I'm a founding partner of Excite Ventures with Michael and Frost. We met in 2013. They're vitreoretinal surgeons and identified a lot of innovation in the space. And then we started the firm in 2014, made our first investment in 2015, and then our first fund in 2016. We're investing out of our third fund, very small still by comparison to my colleagues up here. But I think the strategy has capacity at an early stage of 75 to 100 million. And we were founded really to bridge that gap of the early stage valley of death that happens and exists in life science, right? So we want to be there. And speaking about stages, we'll invest anywhere, early stage broadly defined. So anywhere from spin out to a modest Series B. And what's key for us is that there can be a capital efficient funding to that next critical milestone where others will become interested. And we'll invest also. What we like about ophthalmology is the ability to kind of diversify across sectors. So you've got devices, diagnostics, and therapeutics. And work with Rob and Ron at InFocus often, and Jeff and the gang at Visionary.
Great, we'll let Ron go. Next.
I'm Ron Weiss, and I'm a practicing ophthalmologist and founder of Chicago Eye Consultants. I also have a 20-year history of venture investing, and I'm a co-founder of InFocus Capital Partners, along with my partner, Rob Rothman. In 2018, we launched a $20 million life science fund focusing mostly in pharma, but then device, diagnostics, and we also have AI and telehealth assets. I was told to keep this very short, and I listened.
Thank you, Ron. You get more time later, so.
So first of all, I have to excuse myself to being late, but I was stuck in a one-to-one meeting, if I can take that as an excuse, sorry. Klaus Stöckelmann, I'm managing partner of Peppermint Venture Partners. We are a Berlin-based fund in Germany. We invest across Europe, and we are looking also in selective US cases. The reason why I'm here is that we see the US as a main market for our startups coming from Europe. One of our companies is also here, Implant Data. They presented a couple of times here at this summit. We like ophthalmology because I think these days, especially with the wave of digitization of the system, we do see certain potential for digital health in ophthalmology. So far, I've heard not a lot here today, but maybe that will come, and I'm very interested to meet, of course, the other focused investors here.
Great. Thank you, Klaus, for coming all the way from Europe to join us here today. And so a really diverse panel of investors, deep experience, breadth, and opportunities, again, for many entrepreneurs, hopefully to meet them. So we're going to kick off. We've got 5 formal questions for the group, and then a lightning round of lots of fun questions. Some I haven't asked, they don't know about, that I added. So we'll have some fun. Let's keep the dialogue going. So Bill Link stole our question that we wanted to start off with, but I'm going to preface it and ask the panelists to only add incremental. But the question was kind of why ophthalmology? What is it about the generalists that are here that gives them this exciting interest to invest in this category? And for those long-standing folks that this is what they do, kind of what's that sort of pull that keeps you here and allows you to, have multiple funds and returns? But I'm going to start at the end with Klaus and work our way backwards. So you just said AI and data, but is there anything else in ophthalmology that has attracted you to come to the US and to start looking at deals as well?
I think the underserved market in ophthalmology, which you don't believe is still existing also in different indication areas. We felt that besides medtech, which we of course do, the digitization, especially the data piece, of high interest. So we have been very interested in remote monitoring anyway, so we believe there is a play in ophthalmology, while some countries are behind. Europe is behind compared to the US. And therefore, I think everything around sensors, generating data, images, and we heard this morning or this earlier on, is something which just creates new business models. And we found that very thrilling and very exciting. The only issue I have, if you talk to corporates in Europe or in the US, they actually don't know how to run a data-driven business model, which from my point of view is maybe one of the challenges to get deals done with them. But I hope that will change over time.
Great.
For In Focus, we decided to naturally lean into the two things we know best, venture investing and ophthalmology. But what we've done is we've surrounded ourselves with a team of advisors and partners that have been accretive and have been a lot of fun in looking at these new opportunities, early stage, Series A, Series B. We're all within ophthalmology, but we are agnostic as to pharma, device, AI, telehealth, gene therapy.
Great.
Right.
James,
I mean, this is the exciting stuff, right? Like the thing we like about ophthalmology is that it sits at the convergence of so many technological trends, right? So whether it's gene therapies or AI and ML or robotics, the unique properties of the eye lend itself well towards that type of innovation. So, if you're talking about what really gets us excited about investing in the early stage, it's taking that early stage risk. But that's not to say that we're not looking at things, and making a quick investment. We're often following things for many years while the technology is developed so that we can be that first check in institutionally.
Great. Tyler, huge portfolio, many years. Why ophthalmology now?
Like I said earlier, we've invested in everything. I mean, you think about it, we've invested in a lot of hotels over the years. You take care of people's overnight needs. The thing about ophthalmology is you're making a difference in people's lives. I mean, they lose their sight. It's one of the number one reasons why people are, you ask them what they're scared about, losing their sight. I mean, you guys make a huge difference in something that people cherish greatly. And that I find extremely rewarding, as it relates to the areas within ophthalmology. I'd say it'd be device and pharmaceuticals.
So we round up with Jeff, but I want to let him know that I went to his website earlier today, and that is a thesis on why you should invest in ophthalmology for all of you looking at the numbers in addition to the qualitative. But go for it, Jeff.
Well, I actually think the culture of innovation in ophthalmology is unique, and that's one of the things that I find most attractive. Bill and the rest of the panelists in the prior panel were ample evidence of that, and yet it permeates throughout the culture. So if you talk to the medical professionals who are involved, it's something where every ophthalmologist I've ever met is interested in the new shiny thing and wants to play with it. So that's a good thing. And we see industry being willing to partner with us to help to bring some of those forward. So, we did the math on kind of the social impact of our whole portfolio and think that at scale will be north of 30 million people a year that can be benefited from just the products in our portfolio. So it's one of those places where I always look for a place where I can have fun and make money and do some good, and this is all three.
Ditto. So now we're going to get to the bear part of the discussion. So obviously, as many of you know, and maybe not exactly know, but all of us who have lived it, February of 2021 was sort of the mark of the beginning of the decline, and then it's just gotten deeper, wider, and have obviously affected the macro environment as well as some other political and inflationary trends. So the question to the esteemed panelist is sort of how has this impacted their investment work, whether it's investing, whether it's managing on their board, their portfolio companies? How have you changed tactics? What options are you finding? It's fairly open-ended to sort of really let us understand kind of how, with examples, this bear market is impacting your day-to-day investing and company portfolios. And I think I wanted to start with we'll start with Tyler, actually. So.
Nobody likes to catch a falling knife, and it kind of feels like that's the environment we're in right now. And if there's still people putting money to work, we're still putting money to work, but we're a lot more cautious about it. I mean, your first focus clearly is on the companies you've already invested in. And it's not just the money time that you're focused in on, but it's the hours that you're putting into working with your team to ensure that they're doing the right things to make sure that their money lasts, because it's hard out there to raise money right now. But and that's not to say we won't put money to work in new companies. You're always looking to do that, but your first focus is clearly on taking care of the companies you've already got your money invested in.
Yeah, maybe Ron, do you want to keep going?
So our cycle for new investments actually ended at the end of 2020. So our primary focus is managing our existing portfolio companies and making sure, one, helping them raise capital, helping them control their burn rate, and finding new sources of capital, maybe even non-dilutive sources of capital. So that's our primary objective. We spend our time doing that. I think we've been helpful, whether it's having staff take equity in lieu of a decreased salary or no salary at all, using third-party vendors, cutting the objective to just mission-critical objectives. These are all things that we've helped. We've helped them gain non-dilutive financing through licensing deals, mostly outside of the U.S., but also forming strategic partnerships, especially with strategics that aren't ready to acquire, but obtaining a call option, so to speak, in the future.
Yeah, those are all great examples. James, did you want to add anything on kind of how you're weathering this bear market?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great summary of how to think tactically across the board of how you kind of triage those portfolio companies in this type of environment. But just to sound a more upbeat and optimistic note, right? Tyler said that they're still investing, and I think some of us here are as well. Because investing in early stage innovation, it's counter-cyclical, right? So you're investing for the long term, but you need to make sure that you have a strong syndicate and that next stage of funding can come from within, or have a very clear story about where you're going to go next.
Great. And Jeff, do you want to add anything before we go to the international perspective?
I think everybody got the right thesis on, operating, blocking, and tackling to make sure that you don't run out of cash and time. When we look at the environment right now, 18 months ago, it was a risk-on environment for everybody, and including the big strategics in our space. And even though we could certainly use more buyers in ophthalmology, there were plenty more transactions going on then than there are now. So I think even if a big strategic's business is in great shape, they don't want to be appearing imprudent at this point. So everybody's kind of screwing down the fasteners on valuation and what you need to do to prove the case for the business that you have. And I think there's a lot more focus right now on revenue generating assets, and that's the real world. So if you have clinical stage assets that are proceeding, then make sure that they can get there to the finish line. And we have had great benefit from talking with our friends at the strategics when we enter transactions, not like 3 years later when we say, hey, would you like to buy something I created? But we talk to them early about what their perspective is, and that's been super helpful all the way along to see what their challenges are.
Yep.
That's
and then
really it.
Klaus, we're going to have you bring a European perspective. What's it like out there in Europe in terms of the bears or bulls in Europe investing?
I think there's a lot of similarity. However, the competitive advantage of you guys in the US is still existing in terms of how much money you can raise if the climate is good or if you have a good asset. That has never been the case in Europe. Also, the round's getting bigger. Even the A round can get to 50, 60 million. But for an early stage medtech to get a 50 million A round, I wouldn't think that's possible in Europe, or hardly possible. The valuations have also come down, but from a different level. They never have been that high that it was here in the US. So I think fundraising, is still tougher in Europe. However, what gives me hope is that in terms of working with strategic partners, there's some flexibility also on the strategic partner side. You might have seen the deal of iStar in Belgium on their stand that they get a 60 million undiluted funding and a kind of earn-out structure to run the clinical trials. I think this is most likely something you have to do when you can't raise all the capital privately, or what is even more complicated, to list a company in Europe. You can still do it, but it's not a lot of fun because liquidity in this asset class is low, and everybody is thinking about how you can increase that, but not the right time now, right? So I think for doing early stage investment, it is a bargain currently to invest in Europe, but that doesn't help you a lot because you have to think the story through until the bitter end or the good end, which is how much funding the companies requires, right? And I think that's something which most VCs, except they have a 300-400 million fund, are currently considering what to do in terms of new investments. So I think it's not, I would not say it's the end of the story, but I think the market has to change to accelerate how it was before the breakdown.
Got it. Yep, and so I'm going to switch just a little bit to valuations and just very briefly maybe ask just a few of the members, kind of what has been the impact on the private valuations given somewhere between 30 to 70 to 80% correction, depending on the biotech or the pharma or the device company since its peak early last year, and specifically, maybe on a percentage average basis, kind of what have you seen when you do a round in 2022, or what expectations should folks have for valuations? Or are there actually some sectors within ophthalmology that are insulated from some of those valuation pressures? And maybe I'll go to James, nodding his head.
Sure. I think at the early stage, we've been fairly fortunate. We haven't seen, at least on our end, we haven't seen any down rounds. We've seen a lot of continuations. Just companies smartly and prudently doing an extension round to make sure that they can get through this type of environment. And I think that's the environment at the early stage has benefited from a rotation from some of the larger funds that have shied away from some of the later stage crossover types of financings that they would have done otherwise, and they're focused on the early stage. So I think that's muted some of the impact here at the early stage.
So you're just keeping a flat price or using a convertible note instrument then, James?
In some cases, yeah. Okay. We've seen some modest step-ups also.
Okay, yep. Great. Go ahead. Ron looks ready.
We are having the same consistent experience. I would say we've had 2 up rounds, one modest, one significant, and that was in AI and telehealth. We've had one down round, but that was just an insider round, just purely for insiders. So it was an efficient way to raise capital quickly, and so we did it, and it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, has anybody been using pay-to-plays, additional liquidation preferences? I mean, valuation is just one component of what the dilution and equity cap table looks like. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to just comment. Usually in these rough markets, the terms get, in the favor of the buyers, at least until we change the cycle.
Everybody looks at valuation and tries to determine if you can get a deal done strictly based on valuation. So there are some firms, I'm sure, that would do that, but we kind of have a 2-step process where our decision-making is binary as to whether or not there's an asset we can fall in love with or not. If we can't fall in love with it, it doesn't matter what the price is. But it is true right now that cash is hard, and so that we just completed evaluation with some of our colleagues down here for a new round for Ravana that actually was a nice up round, was oversubscribed, did well. But in general, we're seeing that if we look to find new investors to come into the cap tables, everybody's very disciplined about what they're doing. And, many people are faced with flat to down rounds.
Yep.
We're just, until we can get the process moving again and actually get some transactions done or some public offerings, the whole thing is just slowed down. It's like walking through molasses.
Yep, we're going to get to that in just a moment. I don't know if Tyler or Klaus want to add anything. If not, I'll go on to the next question. Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
You know what? We've had a couple of up rounds this year. You know, we've done, I mean, we've opened rounds back up on companies I would have never thought a year ago that I would have ever taken more money at the same terms. And these are companies that have made great progress. And you're just looking at the environment and going, having some extra cash on the balance sheet's really a smart thing, and dilution's not the number one thing right now.
That's right.
And you know what? I'd be honest, I fully expect I'm going to have companies that have to raise money next year that we're going to see down rounds. I mean, it's just facts of life.
Yeah, the public markets do trickle down to the private markets, which actually gets us to the next question, which for the audience, so we've been talking more about the portfolio companies and sort of how they're being managed through this bear market, but the venture firms themselves are also having to struggle and work their way through these times as well. And everything is connected. It just keeps going down the line, all the way to the LPs as well, who don't have the additional, maybe as much capital as they had at the peak years. So I just wanted to ask the panelists, and I think maybe we'll start with who haven't I started with yet, Klaus this time. Just talk a little bit about kind of what impact the bear market has on your fund in terms of a new fundraise, the size of a fund, any other features that might be helpful, because I think it's important for the entrepreneurs to understand the VCs are your partners, and you need to understand their needs and their challenges as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we were lucky. We sold the company a couple of months ago, which was very good for our LPs and the partners as well. And as a consequence, we have topped up our current fund. Because during Corona, it turned out to be very difficult to really convince new LPs via Zoom or Teams alone, right? Not interacting with the people. And we also currently revisiting our thing we wanted to do, and there was a publication also here in the US about the fund that we want to make a pure ophthalmology fund, which we still not have given up, but we have sounded that, especially in Europe, and I have to say that was a bit of frustrating exercise. And we now have to reconsider whether we give this a different name. I will tell you later maybe what the name will be. It will still include heavily ophthalmology, but it will include other things, because we believe that it will be very tough to raise a fund purely on ophthalmology like you guys did. I still believe in this vertical principle, but if you can't convince people, even with maybe your KPIs, then you have to adjust. But in general, fundraising for smaller funds in Europe has remained very tough. But if you have seen the funds like LSP, which sold themselves to EQT, they all become private equity companies, by the way. And I'm just waiting until this happens in the US as well.
Great, yeah.
So no venture capital anymore. No, I'm kidding. It's a different label doing venture capital.
Thank you.
So we're laying the groundwork for a second fund, and we seem to have more strategic and institutional interest than perhaps LP and family office interests, because LPs and family offices are feeling a lot less free cash flow, but these strategics and institutions understand the opportunity to fund us. So we're navigating that.
That's great. Anybody else want to add anything on the venture side?
I'd agree with that, right? Seeing more interest there, but I think the earlier panel said it's about telling a story, right? We have to do the same thing that the entrepreneurs out there have to do. We have to go to LPs and tell a story. It has to be clear and concise, and why investing in ophthalmology is worthy. And we probably have more in common than some of the entrepreneurs often appreciate.
Anything else?
We've been at this for 30 years, and like I said earlier, all of our money comes from high net worth individuals. At the end of the day, they have to trust that you're going to do the right thing with their money. And so far we have, and they continue to give us more when we ask for more. And so sometime in the first half of next year, we'll go out and raise another fund.
Great. Well, maybe I'll just kick off with Jeff on the last formal question, which actually, so in this industry, we probably have big picture less strategics than most disease areas. Specifically, it's probably also gotten a little bit more narrower, especially with the Novartis announcement a few weeks ago. And we're living in these, I like to say, unbearable public markets. So how do you think about A, either financing options, B, exits, or C, performance for your funds. So in terms of, I think Jeff said it great, you're sort of stuck, or there's a sort of a clog in the wheel. And so until things clear, you have to find your way around with these other tools. So just wondering kind of how are you managing the strategic exit landscape?
You know, there's a lot of structure you can add to deals, and I think that's the most important first place to go. So instead of let's, get a $500 million check and hope it all turns out well for the buyer, it's almost everything is structured and has been in ophthalmology for a while. It's getting worse. But that's okay. If you can partner with strategics around something where both parties can win, perfectly acceptable. We are starting to, I think one of the things that long-term will happen in this market, and is starting to happen now, is we don't have a large number of active transactors on the strategic front, which tells the private equity investors that that's an opportunity. If the market is attractive, that they should be considering building companies here. And there are many, many late-stage assets in ophthalmology that could be combined elegantly. And if we look around the market and see all these single product launches that have really struggled, that having a portfolio of assets that can leverage their backbones and sales forces is very powerful. And so we've seen people like TPG and CBC come into this market.
Emmett at Blackstone should be doing this as well, but yeah.
Sorry?
I said Emmett Blackstone should be doing this roll-up potentially as well.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, and that's really the world is, and if you look at how I come out of the private equity world, so in that particular world, everybody's paying 13 times EBITDA with ridiculous levels of equity investment required. And for any deal that's somewhere between $25 and $200 million of EBITDA, you can make the phone calls and the next day you'll have 200 people sitting on your doorstep ready to write the check. Ophthalmology doesn't have that, right? It's an extraordinary, $65 billion business that's growing. It has high margins, it's important, and there's a pattern of innovation. And more importantly, as the strategic are slow to capitalize on the new innovation that's coming, then somebody will step in and make that happen.
Yeah, does anybody else want to add anything of kind of how you're thinking about exits in the current climate? Thanks.
Just agree
Go ahead,
with what
James.
Jeff said, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. That's what I wrote down earlier to your question, right? And Jeff hit on exactly that with PE coming into the space.
Yeah.
I think one component of your question was how are you dealing with the LPs?
Sure.
And so, for us, it's all about communication and guiding expectations. And our LPs are certainly aware of the macro environment. And so they have had patience with the progress of our portfolio.
Yep. Great. Did anybody want to add anything before I get to the
think
lightning round?
the other thing I'd point out too is I think the strategics are smelling blood in the water, so to speak. If you don't have to go for an exit right now, don't.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to start this way to Jeff, to Klaus, and the next question goes Klaus to Jeff. We're going to see how fast you can answer single word answers. I have about 12, maybe more questions. They're really quick though. How long in months do you believe the current bear environment is going to last?
14 months.
Keep going.
18.
Okay.
Price is right, 13.
Impossible question, but 12 months.
Okay, he said 12, I said 13.
So I might have said 6, but that's okay. I'll be the optimist. Okay, moving from Klaus. What one event or catalyst will change the trajectory back to a bull market?
If the war ends.
Okay,
War ends and inflation goes
Okay.
way down.
thanks.
Same.
Fed goes to sleep.
I was going to say if we get a big strategic buyout in ophthalmology. Okay, we'll keep going. Are current private ophthalmic company valuations bargains, low, just right, or high?
They're incredible bargains.
Okay.
Agreed.
Agreed. Bargains.
That's not my question. The question is that you raise enough money for the company to accomplish the goals.
I knew someone wasn't going to follow the instructions, so this is good. Okay, so we're going to start on that end. Our current public ophthalmic company valuations, there's a whole panel tomorrow on public, so I didn't overdo that. But valuations, bargains, low, just right, or high? Public companies, ophthalmology
low.
companies.
Low.
Depends.
Okay.
Low.
Just right.
Interesting. Okay. In a bear market, do you spend more time, some of you have answered this, on defense with your existing portfolio, on offense, looking for these bargains, or a balance? Yeah.
Balance.
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 Well, we're defense because we're not.
I would also say defense.
I can tell you that a lot of public funds are on defense. Okay. So for those of you, there was a really important event on Saturday. A football team called Michigan played its rivals, Ohio State, and won. So all the Michigan fans, go, woo, go blue. Okay, so the question for the panel is, are the Michigan gonna win the championship, or is it Georgia?
Not Michigan.
We got an Ohio person here, obviously.
Georgia.
Frost's son went to Michigan, so I'm biased. Michigan.
Georgia. I'm from Ohio.
I didn't know that.
I have no idea. The Germans.
What football?
Wait.
Awesome.
Wait.
So Klaus, you're going to root for Michigan because I'm telling you that's
know
the
the
right
Germans
answer.
were kicked out yesterday on the World Championship. They deserved it,
Okay.
unfortunately.
So I have some more serious questions. I just thought I'd throw that one in the middle. Okay, so in your company board roles, this is an important one for everybody to hear. How many months of runway are preferable? This is really important to survival. So kind of what's that ideal amount of months of cash before you're going to run out of money? And we'll start with Klaus on the end.
6 to 12 months.
12 ideally.
Okay.
I'd say 12 plus. And
Yeah, I'd say 12 plus.
Same.
Okay. In the public markets, it's better if it's 24 months. Okay, moving along. This is just preferences. Do you like refractive or retina better? I know, it's a choice. You can't say both. Or, I mean, you can, but
Refractive.
refractive.
my partners are retina docs. I gotta say retina.
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 Okay, great. And then in terms of drugs, devices, diagnostics, or AI data, which of those four, pick one, do you like the best?
I switched to drugs.
Drugs.
AI.
Device.
Drugs.
So I think earlier there was a question Bill asked about whether people were shooting for doubles or whether they were going for home runs. So I think I wanted to actually add that question. So are you going for the doubles, multiple doubles, or are you going for the home runs?
Long ball.
Doubles or triples.
Okay.
You've investing early stage, you gotta go long.
Yeah, we lean in early, so we go for the home run.
Long run.
Great. So I'm going to ask one more question. All the strategics out there, please don't take it personally. But I wrote this down, which is, which strategic do you believe will be the most active in 2023? I guess we're on that end, Klaus. In ophthalmology. Or
Bausch & Lomb.
In U.S., Alcon, Averic, and Apellis. Overseas, Taya and Dompe.
okay, that was 5 answers, but okay, keep going.
You have taken away
I'm
the
gonna
names
take
from
his
the
5.
Alcon.
Alcon has been the most active. I think Viatris has some interesting potential.
That was what I was going to add. I was going to thank Alcon and Beatrice for participating in the last couple of months of this year in big deals. Okay, and so last but not least, question for the group is, what one advice, same as Bill had, but I want to let this group also impart their wisdom, would you give to the entrepreneurs as we continue to weather this 12-month bear market that I heard? And we'll start with Jeff.
Use your network. Network till you drop. Right now, your friends are the ones that will get you through the tough times.
I would agree with that and add on that you got to figure out how to do more with less.
Tell your story and don't be greedy. If there's a deal on the table, you should really think about taking it.
I agree with all three, but also be flexible.
Take the money if you can.
Okay, so I want to thank the panel for their outstanding advice and wisdom, and enjoy the break and come and find them.